What's going on, everybody? I hope you're having a good day, and I hope you're having a good week. As always, I'm here to try to get everyone to come together, just think, consider, and listen to each other in America again. This is a breaking broadcast. I'm getting out of the norm of having a scripted speech or talking about a specific issue. I really just want to speak to America and people from all sides of the political divide and really ask the question, what are we doing? How far is this going to go? And at what point do you stop talking about other people and start talking to other people? Stop the increased outrage and emotions and ridiculous behavior, which is backfiring. And even if your agenda is to do certain things, you need to understand when you act in a certain manner of emotional outrage and just complete negativity, it actually backfires and does the opposite thing. So even if you do want to do certain things that aren't happening now, it's not the way to do them. I'm just being honest. Just like MLK said, you can't drive out darkness with darkness. You need light to do that. You have to show love. Hating hate doesn't create love. It creates more hate. That's just the way the universe works. You can't walk into a dark room and add more darkness and expect light to come out. That's not how it works. That's never how it's going to work. It doesn't matter how mad you get. It doesn't matter how much people call for civil unrest or say mean tweets or horrible things or try to make people feel uncomfortable in this country or anywhere in the world based off their political ideology. That's where I want to begin this today, is just to make sure people know, even if you disagree with what I'm saying, even if you disagree with what President Trump is saying, even if you disagree with every single thing that's going on in the world today, hate does not bring love, and darkness will never bring light. So no matter how much you act, this is why, in large essence, Trump won. I'm just being honest. Like I said, I voted for Dr. Jill Stein, just being real. At the time, that seemed like the most viable or made sense to me. And, now I couldn't be further drawn away from that side because of all the darkness and the negativity and the hate and the hypocrisy and the delusion and the straight up ignorance and arrogance, which is, calling for civil unrest right now and basically trying to melt reality and blur the lines between left and right and up and down. And it's no surprise to me that there's so much depression and there's so much anxiety and stress and fear is up and negativity is up. It's no surprise to me because people are forgetting the main aspect of changing the world, and that is changing yourself. If you can't even bring light, if you can't even be a good person and show love and compassion and empathy, and let me remind you, the greatest time in human civilization, most of the people that are viciously hating are multi-millionaires or very well off or not even remotely oppressed themselves. So if legends like MLK can do it, and many people before you who have lived through very hard times could show love, compassion, and empathy and still push their agenda, then I think you can too. That's just how I feel. We're going to wait about 20-30 seconds for everyone to get in the live stream. I'm going to try to pin something to the top if you'd like to support. If not, it's all good. Just listen. Let's see if I can get it. Got it. Let's give it about 20 more seconds for people to get in the live stream. And I want to talk about three things today. And the first one is public officials, high-level, movie executives and writers for television are calling for literal civil unrest, which is extremely alarming. Also, I want to talk about the travel ban, which recently passed, and I want to debunk a lot of fake news rumors. And I don't even want to call it fake news. That's played out. But politicians, people like Bernie Sanders, a lot of others that are literally completely fabricating the truth of what the travel ban is. And I mean, it couldn't be more blatantly obvious, but we're going to go over that. And then I want to talk about immigration, since that's still a hot button topic. And it ties into all this stuff that I want to talk about. And please just consider what I'm saying. I am the link from the left to the right. That's my path. That's my position. That is my purpose. So if you are extremely left-wing and you're watching this, if you disagree with everything that Trump says or I said, please listen, because you're probably not going to find a more kind and compassionate and cool, calm, and collected person to explain how hundreds of millions of people are feeling. It's not one or two people. It's not the president. There's hundreds of millions of people who feel this way. And if you really want to unite the country and the world, you have to understand where they're coming from. There's millions of Latinos who feel this way. There's millions of black people who feel this way. There's millions of white people and Asians and Indians and people from every country. I get messages from Pakistan, Nigeria, Canada, South America, countries that you've never even heard of are messaging me and saying, Anomaly, we feel what you're saying. We appreciate what you're doing. It's not just in America. There's hundreds of millions of people who feel this way. So if you really want to unite America and you really have people's best interests at heart, Mexicans, South Americans, you have to listen to what I'm saying, because there's hundreds of millions of people of Latin or black or whatever descent who don't agree with you. So there's a missing link there, unless you think you are the ruler of certain races, especially if you're not even a part of that race. It's very strange to me, but please just consider what I'm saying. First off, I want to start off with some things that people are doing. You have Judd Apatow, who is a very, very smart, I'm sure very kind, brilliant producer, makes a lot of funny movies, very, very well loved and respected in the entertainment industry. He's on Twitter calling Trump a Nazi, a literal Nazi, retweeting the guy from Silicon Valley, I forget his name, but he's saying, no, Trump is a literal Nazi, trust me, we're going to find out with this Russia investigation, which is very weird because the Russia investigation and Trump being a Nazi, I don't see a correlation there. But, I mean, this is what happens when people just freak out. You have high-level writers for the Samantha Bee show, Verified, saying that being civility, literally, saying civility is white supremacy. So being kind and compassionate, being like Martin Luther King, being like, a lot of legends before us who have put up with great oppression, saying that being polite and respectful and civil, that is now a white supremacist ideology. There are very, very extreme positions being taken by writers saying that, referencing the 1970s where there's a lot of explosions and basically putting out a domestic terror threat saying, trust me, it's coming back, it's coming stronger than ever. You have people essentially losing their cool, losing their calm, and scaring millions of people away, scaring away gay people, Latino people, black people, white people, who are just so disturbed by that ridiculous action and over, interpretation of what's going on, that they're sprinting towards the right. They're sprinting towards the center. They're sprinting away from these extremists who literally can't even follow the own rules that they preach for society. So, what is going on? Why are people so upset? What are they doing? What are you trying to accomplish? Because just to be real, when the Parkland students, after that huge incident in Florida, that terrible school shooting that nobody wants to ever see, the media and these kids and this tech companies and all of the liberals and progressives, they came together and pushed this extreme gun control agenda, and not in a kind way, not in a compassionate way, in a very extremist way. They said, if you disagree with us, you're going to get kids killed, you're this, you're that, you're this, you're that, like an extreme agenda of gun control. What effect has it had? It's been 6-7 months. Has any gun control legislation been passed? No. Have people bought more guns? Yes. Gun sales went up by, record sales. The NRA has record level, membership. So not only do you not accomplish, even if you disagree with everything I'm saying, you should at least understand the philosophy and ideology behind what I'm saying, because it's true whether you understand it or not. The agenda was to gun controls and get less guns out there, and in turn it had made people buy more guns and scared more people into joining the NRA, because they're scared of like the delusional extremists who think that they're going to save people from, and it's just so weird to me that the same people pushing gun control and the same people using mass media manipulation are the ones calling everyone Nazis. That is just so confusing to me, but you have to understand it has the opposite effect. When you scream and cry and act absolutely insane, when you're a Peter Fonda and you say, I think Barron Trump should be locked in a cage with pedophiles and raped, I mean, on what planet do you think that's going to have any sort of positive effect? What's the solution there? So the problem is that there's illegal immigrants being detained and they have children temporarily in cages. I agree. That's not a good look. Why are they in cages? First of all, here's what the intelligent and rational person would do if they try to figure it out. First, you'd have to say, who put the cages there? Why are the cages there? There's pictures from 2014 of cages. So for whatever reason, the Department of Homeland Security and ICE, they're keeping kids in cages. Was it Trump that installed it? Is he a dictator? Is he a Disney villain and a Nazi who put the cages there? No, I mean, you could say that if it makes you feel good, and you could think that if it really justifies your end goal. But the truth is that the cages have been there for probably decades, but at least 5 to 6 years, because there's video and physical proof. And then also you have to look at, there's reports of, if you really care about women and children, if you just want to pretend like you care about them, that's one thing. But if you really care about women and children, you would have noticed the reports from the Obama administration where he placed children in the hands of child traffickers. The Washington Post and New York Mag reported on this. So just to be honest, I'm not saying that each one is not bad, but any rational person should be able to say putting kids in the hands of human traffickers and child traffickers is a much bigger deal than temporarily keeping a kid in a cage. Temporarily keeping a kid in a cage, which Obama did as well, it doesn't matter, but that's not great. But it's a huge downstep for someone called in, but it's a huge downstep. Giving someone to a child trafficker is way more traumatizing and terrible than, putting them temporarily in a cage. So first of all, the priorities are screwed up there, but I'm not even talking about that. So say there are kids in cages. Okay, so how do we solve that? What's the solution? Is it posting an Instagram picture? No. Is it posting fake Instagram pictures of Mosul, Iraq, and, kids from protests and 2014 Russell Simmons videos? No. What's the solution? Well, the real solution, if you really wanted to solve it, would be actually going to Department of Homeland Security, talking to them and figure out, why are kids in cages? Why are the cages there? How long are they being held there? Why is that? Can we make the aesthetic better? Can we put them in a playground? Can we put them in nicer places while their parents are being tried and, detained? So that's how you would solve it. That's how, and it's possible to do. It's easy to do. But these fanatical people are just going out, abolish ICE. We shouldn't have illegal immigration. I mean, I'm just going to be real with people now. I don't have a huge stance on illegal immigration. People might think I do because of my videos, but I really don't. If you're a good person and you're an illegal immigrant, I have no problem if you stay. I'm not the president. I don't work for ICE. I respect people doing a job that I couldn't do and I'm not doing. If I wanted to do it, I would do it. That's the difference between me. I'm not a big talker and a screamer and a complainer and a crier. If I want to be the president or I want to be an ICE official and be a better one, I'm going to do it. Or else I'm not going to spend my whole life talking about it. So, do I have a problem with illegal immigration? No. I think the DACA kids, if they're good kids, they should stay. People who are non-criminals can stay. But do I think that there should be no sort of border security whatsoever and the president of the United States shouldn't be doing his job? I mean, that's an extremist position. That's not a normal position. Just because you scream it on Twitter or you have a high-level position making movies or you write for a passive-aggressive, television show, it doesn't mean it's an extreme position to say the president of the United States shouldn't be enforcing the laws of the United States. Border Patrol agents shouldn't be enforcing the law. There's hundreds of thousands of people coming here a month, at least up to 75, 85,000 coming illegally every month. What's your solution? Is it to abolish ICE and just have a steady flow of hundreds of thousands and millions of people coming here illegally? That's the collapse of the system that we have. And I'm not a big fan of the system. I'm not saying but I have a social security identity. I pay taxes. I do things. If you let millions of people into the country with no identity, no taxes, it's complete mayhem. It's complete chaos, and it's already happening. The reason I get calls every time that my live streams go on, I always get calls because whoever had my phone before and had my number before was most likely illegal. Maybe not, but definitely someone scheming. I get calls every day from banks, PayPal, every single industry saying, you owe us money, you owe us money, you owe us money. If you're an illegal immigrant, they have nowhere to trace you. You could have hundreds of thousands of bills. Who are you? They don't know. They don't have your identification. You have no sort of place that they could find you. They don't have a number or a name, or you're not in the database. You're allowed to just literally roam around the country and do whatever you want because there's no sort of justification. So of course, when it comes to the Honduras woman and the girl on the Time magazine who got kidnapped from her father, from the mom who left 3 kids, who was already deported, of course she wanted to come back to America. I mean, not only is our economy great, no one seems to care, there's more jobs than there are, unemployment, but you could come here and do literally virtually anything, get deported, come back, and then people will protect you. And I'm not even trying to get into illegal immigration, but basically what I'm saying is, it's okay to disagree with Trump. It's okay to love illegal immigrants. It's okay to love DACA members. It's okay to want to keep people here. But it's a very extremist position, which has now become mainstream, to say no border, no security, the president of the United States shouldn't be enforcing the law of the United States, and he should just let people in illegally and give people privileges and benefits that I don't have, and just completely abolish the entire system. I mean, and it's not abolishing the system to build a new, better one, like, oh my God, break down the system because it's oppressive and we're going to build a new one. No, you're asking for our country to be basically invaded and just absolutely destroyed by tens of millions of people who have no sort of identification system. It's not a normal stance to have that. I'm not anti-illegal immigrant. I'm not I don't have a big stance on it, but it's insane the way people are acting. You go to the travel ban. I mean, it's 7 countries. One of them is North Korea. 7 countries who have, high levels of terrorism. North Korea, I guess it's just a country that we were basically at a nuclear standoff for 20 years. So it makes sense that maybe you wouldn't want to take people in from there. Just a thought. It's a temporary travel ban until we figure out what's going on and stop terrorism and bad relations in that region. We're basically at a standoff Cold War with Iran. We're basically at a standoff Cold War with North Korea, and the other 5 countries have high levels of terrorist groups infiltrating their country and causing complete mayhem. So it's not that crazy to do a travel ban. But I understand if people would say, hey, I disagree with the travel ban. I think we should have a steady flow of people. That's normal to me. People say, I agree with the travel. That it's normal to have a stance, but what's not normal is to just freak out and have a meltdown and call for civil unrest because you're incapable of processing what's going on. I mean, to start off, North Korea's in that list, so it's not a Muslim ban, but second off, 92% of Muslims are not part of that list. All of the biggest Muslim countries are not part of that list. There's over 1 billion Muslims that are not related in that list. So of course it's not a Muslim ban. If it was a Muslim ban, no Muslims would be entering the country, but it's not a Muslim ban. It's not even close to a Muslim ban. It doesn't have the top Muslim country. It doesn't have a majority, a heavy majority, a 90+% majority of Muslim humans on this planet not being able to enter. So it's not a Muslim ban. What does Bernie Sanders say? What do all liberal politicians say? What do all progressive politicians say? Why am I leaving the left? Why do I not want to associate with progressives and liberals, even though I'm all about love and compassion and empathy and truth and honesty? It's because they're not about any of those things. There's not a spiritual bone in their body. They don't want to drive out darkness with light. They want to drive out darkness with darkness. They want to pander and say that a ban that doesn't include a temporary ban that doesn't include 92% of Muslims, they want to say Bernie Sanders and high-level officials and media sources, it's a Muslim ban, it's a Muslim ban, it's a Muslim ban. That's a lie. I mean, it's not an opinion at that point. It's a straight-up lie because it's not true. There's some things that are opinions and there's some things that are facts. That's not true. So no matter how much you scream, and you notice with me, if I ever get upset, I delete a lot of my videos where I get really mean and mad. I don't curse, I don't scream, I don't yell, because when I start to curse and scream and yell, that means that my argument is not valid. That means that the truth and essence of my discussion is not good enough. If I have to up my voice and scream and yell and curse and cry and get outraged, that means that there's no substance to what I'm saying, so I have to get more mad because it's not working. It's not an effective strategy. Just because you get madder doesn't make it a better, absolutely more real message. It means you're losing your mind because you're living in an upside down world. Basic security is racist, sexist, and xenophobic. The president following the laws of the president of the United States and doing what presidents have done for decades is all of a sudden Nazi, communist. He's building concentration camps. I mean, it's absolute insanity. And I do want to say to these big high-level executives, there's going to be blood on your hands because Steve Scalise already got shot. Rand Paul had his ribs broken, and you're basically essentially calling for civil unrest. You know that there's a punch-a-Nazi movement going on in the United States where a bunch of left-wingers think, oh, we're going to solve the world's problems by punching Nazis in the face because that's totally going to eliminate racism, sexism. So you're calling Trump a Nazi, and you're calling anybody who agrees with him a Nazi. So you're basically essentially trying to blur the lines of reality, calling hundreds of millions of people Nazis when they're not Nazi, and then justifying violence against them. Just this week, I never curse, I never yell, I voted for a Green Party candidate, I've never voted Republican in my life, I've always kept my cool, I've always supported, the unfairness and the injustices and humanity for all races, religions, and genders. I've always been kind. I've always been considerate. I've never been moved. I've got called a terrorist this week by some guy with a rainbow profile picture from San Francisco. I got called a Nazi this week. I got called a Zionist and, screamed at because I just wanted to have a discussion. And basically, I'm considering and learning and listening to both sides and saying, hey, there's some inaccuracies in the media and I'm waiting to see more. And, basically just saying when it comes to Israel and Palestine, first of all, I'm not Jewish, I'm not Muslim, so it's not really my battle. I'm not saying I'm not concerned about it, but there's a Muslim, Jewish, Christian, religious battle that's been going on for thousands of years. And I'm, to be honest, not a part of it. I have no idea why people continuously fight and kill each other over religion. Makes no sense to me. It's not my battle. So I'm called a Zionist because it's a multi-layered battle. It's not, oh my God, these people and that. No, people have been fighting for thousands and thousands and thousands of years because they think their God is just, or they think they deserve Western civilization, or they want Jerusalem. I don't know. I don't live in Israel. I don't live in Palestine. I'm reading the news. I'm seeing the news of what Israel's doing. I'm seeing the news of what Palestine's doing. I'm noticing that people on the left, progressives and liberals, don't want to talk about what Palestine's doing. A lot of people in Israel don't want to talk about what Israel's doing. I mean, there's people on both sides being irrational, but it's not. I'm sitting on my couch doing news analysis about certain things I don't cover, and I'm called a terrorist, a Nazi, and a Zionist because why? Because I have common sense and basic decency, and I want civility. That's what I want. There's a writer, a verified writer who works for a television show that's programming your family, if they're watching that television, that says that being civil, being cool, calm, collected, polite, respectful, considerate, learning and listening and discovering and taking in all the ideologies from every race, religion, and gender and every person, that's white supremacy. So being calm is white supremacy. Being normal is a Nazi. Being, having basic laws is the Holocaust. I mean, this is the reality that we're living in. And they ignore reports of, presidents putting children in the hands of child trafficking. They're ignoring the fact that, there's slave trade and organ harvesting in Libya. There's been millions of people displaced in Libya, Syria, Iraq. There's a blockade going on in Yemen from Saudi Arabia that's leading to millions of people starving. But let's focus on 2,000 kids and that they're temporarily being held in some facilities. And I'm not saying it's okay or it's great, but I'm saying on the scale of important, your priorities are screwed up because there's millions of people starving, and you think the belle of the ball is like 2,000 kids sitting temporarily in a place that you think the aesthetics aren't nice enough for you. Let's build a nicer room, and that's going to change the world. That's going to stop millions of people from being starved, or kids getting placed in the hands of traffickers, or that's going to stop, it just doesn't even, nothing about it makes sense at all. And all I'm asking is, you don't have to agree with my positions, because to be honest, if you notice, if you listen to my live streams and not just take a video out of context, I don't have very big stances. I'm learning. I'm not filled with ego. I'm not filled with hate. I'm not filled with fake spirituality. I'm not filled with inner racism and sexism and xenophobia while I claim to fight. I'm learning and listening because I don't believe that we even understand what's going on planet Earth. I don't think the politicians are pulling the strings. I don't think even the most woke activist who thinks, oh, I've watched 20 YouTube videos and I'm going to tell you how the world works and you're a Zionist because you don't agree with me. I don't think you have any idea what you're talking about. I don't think most people do. I think most of Earth is unexplored. 72% of the Earth is ocean, around 72%. 95% of the ocean is unexplored. So that means most of the planet that we live on hasn't even been explored yet. You think Christopher Columbus did all the exploring? Most of the world is not explored. We have no idea what's going on this planet. So I don't pretend to know. I'm not filled with ego. I'm not filled with stubbornness and arrogance. I'm learning. I'm listening. But for people in high-level positions to tell me that my stance, my basic stance of kindness and compassion and open-mindedness and listening and learning and not having ego, that's white supremacy and that's terrorism and that's Nazism, because I'm not completely delusional and I don't want a complete breakdown of civilization with no solution intact, because that's what you're doing. Who's going to beat President Trump in the 2020 election? They have no idea. They're just trying to melt it down. What are you going to do if you abolish ICE and abolish the police force and abolish the border and have no wall and have nothing? What do you think is going to happen? Do you think it's going to be a pure it's going to be a utopian society because now they're not stopping people at the border and there's millions of illegal immigrants coming in and wow, flowers are blooming everywhere and it's perfect with no, you morons, why do you think people are coming from Mexico? Besides the fact that we have the best economy, we've ever had, they're coming because it's not great there. There's cartels, there's police, there's federales, there's no law in Mexico. There's literally like a complete breakdown where, not only is the economy not great, but it's not very safe in certain regions. It's not at the peak level of Mexico. There's a lot of issues there, and people are trying to get away from certain of those issues. So if you let that entire country into your country with no sort of law enforcement, and I'm not saying this out of hate, like I said, I have no problem with illegal immigrants. Half my family's from Mexico, my stepfather and my 2 siblings, but I mean, it's just basic common sense. I mean, it's not going to create a utopia. Opening the borders does not make peace, love, and positivity. It makes France and Germany and Sweden and the UK, where crime is up, where knife crime is up, and violent murders are up, and stabbings are up, and robbery and theft is up, because they have an open border policy of letting in people from Syria and Somalia and all of these countries on the travel ban list. Does it mean that these people are bad people? No, of course not. But what it means is, in certain areas, you don't know who's who. I'm not going to let 50 random people live in my house, just like the President of the United States' job is to keep the country safe. So if in these countries there's terrorist organizations running rampant and there's, literally the president of the country is calling for destruction of Western civilization, then maybe it's a good idea for a year or two to temporarily ban people from the country. I mean, it's basic common sense. But even on the travel ban, I don't have a huge stance on it. Yes, pro, con, whatever. I'll trust the people to do their job, and if I want to do the job, I'll do it. I'll work for travel, border security, and I'll figure out what's going on myself. But people don't want to figure out what's going on. They don't want to know the truth. They don't want to go down to the border and realize that 52% of, according to some reports, of people working for Border Patrol are Latino. They're literally people who came from Mexico and Guatemala and Salvador and South America to live in this country and protect the country that they live in, and you're treating them like complete crap. Most of them are Latino, the Border Patrol people. They're not a bunch of white supremacists here to destruct America. I mean, what are you even talking about? And it's this blatant racism and this blatant sexism and this blatant hate from the people that claim that they're standing up for it. Why is there nobody on the left? I have a question for you. Who's on the left that's like me, that leads with love and compassion and rationality? And is there anybody? They're all so hateful. Every progressive and liberal I watch is hateful. Hate, hate, hate. There is no compassion and love, and that's why they're failing. Even if you don't agree with a single policy I've talked about, at least understand this ideology. You're losing support by the droves. Millions of gay people are leaving you. Millions of black people are leaving you. Millions of Latino people are leaving you. Millions of Green Party voters are leaving you. Millions of Bernie Sanders people are leaving you. Millions of lifelong liberals and Democrats and 2-time Obama voters are leaving you. Why are they leaving you? It's because hate doesn't work. I say this all the time because it's true. There's a great Netflix documentary, I don't know if it's still on there, of Daryl Davis, a black jazz musician who was the most successful person in U.S. history for disarming the KKK. That's a crazy, crazy thing. A black man, a black jazz musician, able to disarm the KKK? How did he do it? Did he do it with force? Did he do it with weaponry and by being mean and screaming on Twitter and by threatening people and saying, we're going to start explosions in the United States if you don't agree with me? No, he did it by being extremely nice to them. And he was so nice to the KKK members that they realized after a few months, I don't hate black people. I hate white people. White people annoy me more than black people do. So they gave up. They gave him, he's got a whole closet full of KKK robes that he has as a reminder of how to disarm some of the most hateful and ignorant people in society. You do so with love and compassion and kindness. People hate on me on the left. Progressives message me rude things and liberals message me rude things and call me a terrorist and call me a Nazi. But who's changing Republicans and conservatives for the better? It's me. And I'm not saying that Republicans and conservatives need me to change for the better. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is I get messages all the time from lifelong conservatives and Republicans who say, Anomaly, I've never thought like that. You make me more calm. You calm me down. You make me more considerate. You make me think. You make me want to be nicer to liberals and progressives. You make me a better person. I'm not saying like I'm bragging, like I need to do that. These are just the messages I get. So who's changing the Republicans and conservatives for the better? It's me. It's not you. It's me, because my method is effective. I know how to talk to people. I am compassionate. I am empathetic. I am considerate. Not just to the people I agree with, because that's not what empathy is. Empathy is not, oh, I'm going to be nice and respectful to the black and Latino people who agree with me. But if you're black and Latino and you don't agree with me, I'm going to call you mean names and I'm going to try to destroy your life. That's not empathy. That's delusion. That's ignorance. That's arrogance. That's hate. So you're not helping. You're not helping your side, and you're not helping the side that you disagree with. Meanwhile, I'm trying to do both. I'm trying to get liberals. You don't have to agree with me. You don't have to agree with President Trump. You don't have to agree with a single policy. But the reason, I'm telling you right now, the reason that you're getting so freaked out and mad and hateful and negative and nasty about it is because you're not in the right mindset to actually change for the better. You don't have a solution. And the way you're doing it's not working. President Trump won almost every county in the United States besides the liberal, tech cities. Look at the map. It's like 96% red. Yes, there's more people in New York and LA, and millions of more people voted there. But overall, he's extremely, extremely popular most of this country. That was last election. I voted for Jill Stein. Tens of millions of people who support President Trump now are basically at least say, hey, he's the president. Relax, weirdos. Let him do like basic normal stuff. People support him by the droves right now. The media's not reporting on it because they never reported. They've been lying for the past 20 years and starting wars in Libya and Syria and Iraq, and nobody cared, and putting kids in the hand of child traffickers, and nobody cared, and throwing kids in cages, and nobody cared, and all of a sudden they're telling you to care because they're the delusional ones. The whole election, they said Trump had a 1% chance of winning. He's never going to win. He's racist. He's sexist, KKK, xenophobia, and he won the election. They started this agenda before he even got into office. Before he even did a single thing, before he even passed a single bill or signed a single order, they said all of this stuff based off the America that they themselves created. It was the laws that they passed. It was the legislation that they did. So of course, a year or two, have they changed? Have you ever thought to backtrack a little bit? Like, what am I missing? What am I understanding? I'm not saying you have to agree with Trump. I'm not saying you have to agree with me, but what are you missing? What are the tech companies missing? Are they changing? No, they're getting aggressive. And I'm telling you right now, there's going to be blood on your hands the next time somebody gets shot or the next time somebody gets hurt or injured because you are calling for civil unrest. You are making it literally incapable, impossible for people, black, white, Latino, Muslim, Christian. I have Muslim friends who are doctors that are Trump supporters. What are you going to tell them? You're going to tell them they can't be Muslim from Pakistan and support Trump? I get messages from Pakistanis all the time and saying, we're listening to you in Pakistan. You're going to tell them they can't support Trump because you're a white liberal and you're the slave master of ideology and you can't possibly be black or Muslim and not agree with me. No, that is racism. That is sexism. That is xenophobia. You paint this broad picture. I can't think of something more racist of Trump saying, hey, I'm going to build a border wall. That's strictly common sense, and I'm not saying you have to agree with it or think it's going to work. There's a high chance it might not work. I'm going to build a border wall in Mexico. It doesn't include South America. It doesn't include Central America. It doesn't include Spain. It doesn't include Mexicans who live here. It doesn't include Guatemalans who live here. It doesn't include the tens of millions of if not 50 plus million Latinos who live here. It's strictly a border policy to say, oh, if you're against illegal immigration, you hate all Latinos. That is racism. That's why black people can't stand you. That's why all my black friends who never post on Facebook, you might not see them on social media, they message me and say, Anomaly, thank you for doing what you do. I'm deathly afraid of white liberals because they're so ridiculously aggressive and racist, but they don't even know it. That's what my black friends say. They're afraid of white liberals because you're scaring everybody with your racism by saying, it's okay to say, I disagree with you on illegal immigration. It's okay to say I disagree with Trump. What's not okay is to say if you don't agree with illegal immigration and you don't want open borders, then you hate all Latino people. That's racism and delusion at its finest. Trump puts a temporary ban on 6 countries and North Korea, which doesn't include 92% of the Muslims in the world. And you say, Trump hates he's trying to ban all Muslims from the country. That's an extremist point of view, and it's not even remotely true. That's racism. That's xenophobia. That's delusion, is by taking a small thing and painting a broad brush. Why do black people have to think like you want them to think? Why do Latino people have to think like you want them to think? Why does everybody have to agree with open borders and no basic common sense and ignore the terrorism that's gone on for decades in the Middle East while George Bush and Obama basically exacerbated the problem, and it grew and grew and grew and grew, and they took over Syria and they took over Iraq and they took over Afghanistan, and they lied to us and they said Bin Laden's hiding in a cave, even though Bin Laden was a multi-billion-dollar oil mogul. They had people believing, conservative, Republican, and liberal, believing that Bin Laden was some terrorist hiding in a cave. The dude is a billionaire. I mean, the dude is part of one of the biggest oil conglomerates in modern history, and they had you believing he was hiding in a cave. What a joke. While all that was going on, no one cared. And now you have a president who actually eliminated ISIS. Is he doing everything perfect? No. Is there still room for improvement? Yes. Is he dropping a lot of bombs? Yes. But at least ISIS is disappearing. What's his name? Obama dropped, 26,000 bombs, and ISIS was growing. So who was he dropping bombs on? Reports from the Atlantic say 90% civilians were getting drone strikes. So clearly, terrorist groups were not being targeted. At least President Trump is eliminating terrorist groups, so leads me to believe that he's actually attacking the right people for once, because for the last 15 years we were attacking the wrong people and creating refugee crises that are 10,000 times as big as any sort of Mexican detention facility that you put a microscope on that no one cares about. And I'm not saying we can't talk about both, but what I am saying is love, compassion, consideration, rationality, and civility is not racist and a Nazi stance. That is a sane human being stance. That is what Gandhi and Martin Luther King and many people of every race, religion, and gender have preached forever, because that's an effective strategy. You're probably going to get, and I hope good people win, but I'm going to go and vote in November, and I'm going to vote for the rational, sane people. If that's a Republican, then that's a Republican. I'm not going to be able to say that I voted only for Democrat. If it's a Democrat, it's a Democrat, but I'm not going to vote for anybody that's just pandering and saying Trump's banning all Muslims, or Trump hates all Mexicans, or Trump hates all immigrants. That's a lie. Since when was immigrant a synonym for elite? It just doesn't make sense. I'm not saying I even have stances on these things, like a huge stance, but I'm going to vote for rational, sane people, because people in high-level positions are insane. You're calling for civil unrest. You're calling for basically a civil war because you're incapable of presenting your ideology in a manner that makes sense to people. No one understands what you're saying because it doesn't make sense. Judd Apatow thinks Trump's a Nazi because he's separating families. I mean, these parents are taking their kids across a border where reports are showing that 80% of kids are being raped and 10,000 out of 12,000 kids are being trafficked, not with their parents, and he's detaining them temporarily because their parents broke into the country illegally, just like when the millions of black, white, and Latino Americans commit a crime and go to jail, they're separated from their parents, and Judd Apatow's calling him a Nazi and saying, no, you don't believe me that he's a Nazi? Just wait till the Russia stuff comes in. What does the Russia stuff have to do with parents being separated? Nothing about it makes sense. That's why they're getting more and more aggressive and angry, because you have to get aggressive and angry when the point that you're making doesn't really make sense. And if you're not able to have a discussion with people, this is not going to end pretty. And I don't want to see a civil war. I don't want to see civil unrest, because we are living in the greatest civilization in modern era. We have an economy where there's more jobs than there are homeless people. And on the same note, I do want to say this is where that ideology fails. Again, I'm going to make a whole video on this, but in California, you have a ridiculously large homeless population that nobody ever cares about. There's hundreds of thousands of people living on the streets. You go to San Francisco, there's syringes, there's crackheads, there's heroin addicts, and there's dozens of thousands of tens of thousands of people living on the streets. You go to Los Angeles, every street you go down, there's dozens of tents. Literally, these cities, these self-proclaimed liberal cities, are being taken over by homeless people. Why are there so many homeless people in the United States? And I'm going to tell you something right now that might not be popular, and they're not going to say it on the news. First of all, they're not even talking about the homeless population. They're more concerned with people from other countries than they are about their own country, which I'm not saying we can't talk about both, but People are homeless here not because they don't have jobs. In Brazil, you talk to Brazilians, or you talk to people from Venezuela, or you talk to people from South America. The people in Brazil are homeless because they don't have jobs. There are entire families on the street in Brazil because the economy's bad. In most countries, you see homelessness because there's no jobs, there's no money, there's a failing economy. People are homeless because they literally don't have a place to go. It's not like that in California. People might get mad, but this is the truth. They have more jobs available than they have people seeking jobs. I know for a fact you can go to a facility, get food stamps, a job, and a place to stay within 24 hours if you're not a crackhead or a heroin addict. The reason people are on the streets here in San Francisco and in LA, and the reason it's getting worse and worse and worse, is not because the economy's bad like other countries, people are desperate and have nowhere to live. It's because people are mentally ill. That's a big one, is mental illness. But a lot of people, they're not mentally ill. I'll say maybe, I don't know the exact percentages, but I'll say 50 to 60 to 70% of the people, they don't need a job, and they're not mentally ill by nature. They were not born mentally ill. They're doing crack and heroin and heavy drugs on the streets and living there. I know people that say, my cousin's on the street doing crack. He could go live with my uncle if he wants. My sister-in-law is on the streets. I know people, their family members are on the streets, not because they have a problem, clearly, but they're doing drugs. And they reward you in this state for doing drugs. If you are a good person, if you're a good Latino citizen, and you try to become a police officer, or you try to work a job, not only do you get harassed and screamed at and yelled at and treated like complete crap, but they take your money, they take your taxes. Every $1,000 you spend, they take $100. They take income tax, this tax, that tax. You get taxed every which way. They steal your money, and then they give it to people doing crack on the street. Not completely, not totally, but people are calling their friends from all over. I know this for a fact. They're saying, dude, why are you homeless in Chicago? Why would you be homeless in New York City? Why would you be a crackhead here? Come to Los Angeles. You could be a crackhead and they'll pay you to be a crackhead. So this is the same failed ideology at the border. And I don't want to be not compassionate, because I do want to say there's a lot of people who do need help. People need mental help. I'm just being honest. They don't need jobs. We have jobs available, literally. Nobody on the street needs a job. That's not, in other countries it is, not here. People are on the street, they have a mental illness or they have a drug addiction problem. So we do need to help people, but it's the same with the border problem. The reason I went on that huge tangent is because you have to be a little bit, I don't want to say mean, but you have to be able to separate the people who are milking the system and the people who don't need to be there from the people who need to be there. It's the same with the border. How many of the people coming are seeking asylum? Not as many as you think. If you talk to a liberal and progressive, they say, all Latinos are illegal immigrants. There's no such thing as a Latino who doesn't agree with me. And every single person at the border desperately needs our help. It's just not true. Are there a large portion of them? Are there some? Absolutely. But a majority of them now are not seeking asylum. They are looking to take advantage of progressives and liberals because you paint everybody with a broad brush. So they're coming in droves because you can smuggle a child, you can steal somebody's child, come to the border, literally get arrested, get detained, commit a crime, traffic a kid, smuggle a kid, rape a kid, and progressives and liberals will defend you. Literally. I'm not saying this like hypothetically. This is literally. They're progressives and liberals will defend rapists and criminals. I'm not saying, just so they don't take me out of context like Donald Trump, I'm not saying all people coming. My family came, my grandmother came from Puerto Rico, my stepfather, my siblings came from Mexico. I'm not saying everybody's a rapist and a criminal, but I'm saying, separate what I'm saying, if somebody comes to this country, smuggles a child, rapes a child, steals a child, comes here, commits a crime, and kills somebody, liberals and progressives will support that person because they don't have the ability to assess good from bad. They say everybody's a Latino. Latinos are victims. Everybody's a Muslim. Muslims are victims. All Muslims are being banned even though all Muslims aren't being banned. Everybody is doing this even though everybody's not doing this. Everybody on the street needs a job even though nobody on the street needs a job. Everybody on the street needs our help even though 50-60% on the people on the street are just crackheads and heroin addicts because you reward them for being crackheads and heroin addicts. There's a lot of people, the bill that President Trump overturned, I mean, there's multiple ones that he was operating off of with the zero tolerance policy. But the main one that was separating parents from their kids, do you know what bill that was? Do you know what legislation that was? It was an anti-child trafficking bill. So the reason that legislation was put into place was not to act like the Holocaust. It was to make sure that kids weren't being child trafficked and being, raped and molested at the border, because that's what's happening. That's how easy it is, because that's how naive leftists have become. They say all Mexicans are victims and we need to help them all. So what President Trump was trying to do is basically be a little bit tougher so he could separate that people. You have to, I'm not saying be completely mean, but when you're tough, then you discourage the bad people from coming. When you're tough, you can separate the people who need to seek asylum and the women and children and the child rapists and the criminals and the killers and the people that are bringing drugs into the country. That's how you separate it. But when you paint everyone with the broad brush and do this, that's how you get a ridiculous homeless problem. That's how you get hundreds of thousands of homeless people and crackheads and heroin addicts everywhere in the street, and people who can't even talk and who are assaulting people. My friends that are immigrants from Italy, from Mexico, from South America, who own businesses and came to this country legally or illegally, but now got their citizenship, they are being terrorized. You want to talk about terrorists? They're being terrorized by crazy crackheads on the street. I can't even walk 2 blocks without getting harassed by like 20 crackheads. I mean, it's getting ridiculously out of hand. And they're getting more emboldened because they get money and privileges and more benefits than a citizen gets for actually not being a crackhead. So that's what you're promoting. You're promoting it in the cities. You're promoting it at the border. I'm not saying to not be compassionate and not get some people mental help, but when you paint everybody with a broad brush, when you say, this is what I say, this is what's happening in Mexico even though it's not true, and anybody who disagrees hates all Latinos. The travel ban is Muslim ban, even though 92% of Muslims aren't a part of the ban. And it's not, it's okay to disagree with what I'm saying. I don't care if people disagree. I don't care if you want to have a debate. I don't care if you have some knowledge and information to share. I welcome it. I argue with people all the time who call people stupid and are mean on my page. I say, stop being mean, let people debate. But what I am saying is, you have no right to call people a terrorist and a Nazi and call for civil unrest because they don't agree with your failed ideology. I mean, it just absolutely makes no sense. And it's not a fringe group. You want to talk about fringe groups with 1,000 people in it that nobody cares about, that literally have not harmed people in 30 years, and compare it to millions of tens of millions of people in high-level positions pushing this agenda that is literally more insane than anything we've seen since the 1950s. I mean, calling for civil unrest, calling for people's kids to get raped in a cage with pedophiles, saying that being civil and calm and sensible and rational and reasonable is white supremacy, and these people still have a verified check mark and they're allowed to write for television shows. I mean, this is ridiculous. And I just want to say, people need to stay calm, and that's why I'm gonna do my little rants. I'm gonna say my little piece, but I'm not gonna curse. I'm not gonna scream at the top of my lungs. I'm not gonna get irrational, because just like MLK said, you can't drive out darkness with darkness. When you add darkness to darkness, it either keeps it the same or adds more darkness. You need light to do that. And even if you disagree with what I'm saying or what Trump's saying, if you want to convince people, you need to do so with educational or inspirational videos that have statistics and maybe nice music behind. Not this like dun 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 dun. Ah! It's not convincing anybody. You're scaring everybody away. I know people who agree with you are going to continuously tell you, yeah, that's true, but just wait till November. Wait till 2020 election. You're going to, oh my God, what the heck? It's because people are freaking out. I mean, of course, all the ills of the world are not going to be solved by a Democrat or a Republican. But when you're talking about one side of the debate, calling for civil unrest, calling anybody who's calm a white supremacist, you have a high-level movie executive calling for the rape of a child and calling for anybody who has basic common sense and believes in low taxes and like just borderline like, you know, less regulations is a Nazi. Don't be surprised when people freak out and run the other way, because people aren't. And then those same people are calling for gun control aggressively. Those same people, I mean, it's just so ridiculously bizarre. to see this type of behavior. So this is my call to people on the left and the right. I don't care who it is, because both sides need to be a little bit more calm and rational, because at this rate, this escalation rate, it's not going to lead to anything good. People are going to get hurt, and there's going to be blood on the hands of anybody on either side of the debate who continuously ramps this up and tells people it's okay and justifies people calling everyone labels and calling for violence and civil unrest and the treatment of 1950s, United States. I mean, this is not going to end well if this continues, and I don't think it's going to continue. I don't like to put that out there in the world, but just please think about what you're saying. Think about how you're acting. Think about how you're treating your neighbor. And really, if you want to stop a problem, just create a solution and figure out a way to get your point across. Because when you scream at me, when you yell at me, when you curse at me, when you call me names, and this goes for conservatives too and Republicans, because I see it on my page all the time and it makes me upset. Don't think I think it's cool when someone liberal or someone with a question comes and makes a statement. You say, "You're stupid, you're dumb, go away." I don't like it when you do it too. It annoys me completely. I can't stand it, so stop doing that. It goes both ways. But when you hate on someone, instead of communicating with someone, it drives them further away. So when you're on my page and a liberal comes to my page or a progressive comes to my page and makes a statement, even if they're being nasty, I still want you to be nice to them. Even if they curse at me, I don't want you to curse and argue with them. That annoys me. Be nice to them. Be nice to them and explain to them. Show them love and win with an argument. If you have to win by calling someone stupid, you don't have a good argument. I don't want to see conservatives do that, and I don't want to see liberals do that. But what really bothers me and why I speak about liberals a lot, it's because it's not just people, on this board. It's high-level people in big media positions and in big power, not just calling for, discussion or debate or like aggressive banter, but straight up calling for civil unrest and telling people, if you don't agree with my policy of civil unrest, you are a supremacist or something, very, very foul. It's just absolutely ridiculous. So I want to say all sides of the debate, lead with love, lead with compassion, lead with kindness. Understand that darkness does not drive out darkness. And we're at a point right now, we're at a breaking point where you have hundreds of millions of people who feel one way. You have hundreds of millions of people who feel another way. You have a president of the United States trying to just keep law and order intact. And you have an aggressive group that will stop at nothing to destroy the borders, to destroy ICE, to destroy the police force, to call for gun control, to do everything that basically a fascist would do. And then if you disagree with them, they freak out and call you all these labels. Literally, fascism. It's not going to work out in the way you think it's going to work out. So this is my call for everybody. I appreciate you guys listening. I appreciate you guys. As always, just have a discussion, have a conversation. Understand that freaking out and acting in that way always has the reverse effect of what you want it to have. It's not going to bring light and peace and utopia. It's going to bring everything that you never wanted to this country, and I don't want to see it. We've made so much progress. We're still making progress. We have the ability for a different president to come in a few years and in 4 years and, build on whatever you want to build on, but if you try to destroy all basic rationality and destroy the fabrics of basic sanity, it's going to backfire. So please be kind, please be considerate, please have discussions, and stop aggressively hurling ridiculous labels at people just because they don't agree with your philosophy, because all Latinos are not illegal immigrants. All Muslims are not in the Muslim ban. No matter how much you scream it, it's not true. There's hundreds of millions of people who don't agree with you. And this broad brush painting and screaming and outrage is just getting to a point of just unbearable at this point. And it's really, hurting the spirituality of the United States and hurting our progress. Thank you guys so much for listening. I appreciate you guys joining me for so long. If you'd like to support, I have a Patreon. It's below the title. It's in the comment section and also a donor box. Patreon, I believe, accepts credit cards. Donor box is just PayPal. And Patreon is once a month, so I'm going to be promoting that more. Donor box is a one-time. Thank you guys who support on that note. Some people say, Anomaly, why would you do this? I mean, first of all, I'm not your enemy, my brother and my sister. I'm not sanctioned by the big media companies. They don't support me. They literally kick me off. YouTube partnership. They try to make it impossible for me to make money because they want the divide and conquer agenda. They don't want people having these discussions. They just want people freaking out. They'll pay Fox News before they pay me, and they'll pay MSNBC before they pay me. There's tens of thousands of gamers and YouTubers who do fake pranks and talk about makeup who do Patreons and crowdfunding. So, why would you feel a negative way about me doing crowdfunding and funding this operation and making a living by doing something that I would think is a little bit more important than makeup tutorials and playing video games? But maybe not. I'm going to go play a video game after this, maybe, because I'm tired of just reading things on Twitter and people freaking out. But thank you guys so much for supporting. Thank you guys to everyone supporting on Patreon and DonorBox. Thank you to people who never support on Patreon and DonorBox and just comment and share and like and tell me Anomaly. I appreciate you. I appreciate that. That means the world. I'm going to post my free email list below. If you'd like to sign up to my email list, it's free. I'm going to send out an email today or tomorrow. I'm almost finished with my new book. It's very, very close. I'm excited to be done with that. I'm just putting the final touches on it. It'll probably be out in a month or so. Thank you guys so much for joining. Free email list, DonorBox, Patreon. I'll also post my YouTube. Subscribe to my YouTube. And most importantly, above politics, I do want to say before I leave, we have to change ourselves to change the world. So don't focus too much on what the politicians are doing. If you want to be a politician, run for office, but be nicer to each other on a local basis. When I go out in the street, the nicest people to me are the homeless people. The nicest people are the people who are cracked out and on heroin. Why are the homeless people and the people that are doing drugs on the street, why are they the nicest people to me? How come nobody else has decency or kindness and consideration? It's because everybody's so focused on each other. We're all so focused on changing the world. We forget about the present moment and where we currently are at the moment. And that's where we can do the most damage. That's where we could be the most effective, is in the present moment. And the homeless people are the only ones there. Everybody else is walking around on their cell phones, being mean to each other, being rude to each other, giving mean faces. I mean, you can't even go a few blocks and just feel like, we have no sense of community anymore. We have no sense of citizenry, of like the one thing that unites everybody in America is the flag, or Americans. I mean, whether you love or hate this country, we are Americans. That's one label that includes everyone. That's why they're trying so hard to demonize that label, because that's the one label that includes everyone and can put us all on the same page. And they're making people hate that. They're making people hate each other, making people hate their friends and family members. And just because someone doesn't agree with your political ideology, show them love. Don't end a friendship or be rude to somebody just because they don't agree with you. How silly is that? They're not the one starting the wars. They're not the one passing the legislation that you don't agree with. They're not the ones doing that. They're simply a person that believes something based on something they've read or watched or learned. I mean, why would you spend that much negative energy and be so nasty and rude to somebody that you know in your personal life? Be nicer to each other, because a collective effort will change America. It's not going to be the president. It's going to be how hundreds of millions of people act. So if you think Trump supporters are mean and rude, then if hundreds of millions of liberals then act mean and rude too, it's going to change America for the worst. Way worse than any Trump supporter ever could have. The way to change America is hundreds of millions of people being kinder, more considerate, and doing nice things on a community level. That's going to change the world. And I'm just tired of the hypocrisy of the people who claim to be super spiritual being so nasty and negative. How can you expect people in high-level positions to do something that we can't even do ourselves? We need to understand our power, not just by screaming on social media, but by being a good person in everyday life. So thank you guys again for listening. I appreciate everyone supporting and joining me on this long live stream. Have an amazing week. Stay calm, stay civil. There's nothing wrong with that. And have conversations. And if you really are bothered by something, work on a viable solution. Just stop being outraged about it, because I really don't want to see bad things happen to good people. Thank you guys for listening. Have a good week. I'll be back later.